You know, folks, I understand that right now times are dark, and I understand that they're uncertain. And I understand that it may feel like that all hope is lost. But I really do believe that the crazier that it gets, and yeah, it's probably going to get crazier, I hate to say, I do believe that that will start to bring more reasonable people together. Maybe the MAGA crowd will just conspiracy theory themselves to death, because I've seen a lot of them fall down into rabbit holes now and begin to question everything that they ever believed. So maybe as they begin to come out and to deconstruct from what they've been buying into for all these years, and maybe if more reasonable people like James Talarico out of Texas stands up and says things like I'm about to play in this clip, maybe if we just get back to talking about what we all have in common and the things that we want to see happen, then maybe we'll start to be able to move forward. I don't know when we will actually reach the point of healing. I know that people says this country needs to heal, but I think that's going to take a long time, and I don't know if we'll ever really fully ever do it. And the question actually becomes, did we ever really to start with, or was the wound always there? You know, I really believe that Donald Trump came along and he picked at a wound and reopened it and made it worse, got it infected, and made it 10 times worse than it once was. But nonetheless, I do believe that there are better days ahead, and there will be better days ahead if more reasonable people will come together. So I'm going to play this clip by James Talarico. I come across this one, and I said, we got to play this. We got to talk about it because it's a good one, and I would like for us to once talk about things on a positive note. So take a look here at James Talarico.
I am in one of the reddest parts of Texas because I am tired of being divided into teams. Red versus blue, left versus right, rural versus urban. Because the truth is, we're all on the same team. Do you have an elderly parent or grandparent who needs care? So do I. Do you struggle to afford the high price of everything? So do I. Do you know what it means to carry the weight of student debt, credit card debt, and medical debt? So do I. Do you want a safe neighborhood? Do you want a good job with good benefits? Do you want a high-quality, well-funded public school? So do I. You're on my team, and I'm on yours. Those billionaire-run platforms and those predatory algorithms, they want to divide this team. The most radical thing you can do in an era of division is bring people together, because we are far more the same than we are different. We have so much more in common than they want us to realize. We have shared problems and shared dreams. Imagine who we could take on if we did it together. Imagine what we could change in this country if we did it together. As one team, we are unstoppable.
You know what, folks? I could almost just sit here and play that clip over and over for y'all, because it actually felt good to hear someone with common sense speak. We live in such a maddening world that to hear someone tone down the rhetoric and just speak, with people instead of at them, to hear someone that was speaking to the people and pointing out that we are way more alike than we may realize. And as I was sitting there listening to that, and I'd listened to it before I played it for you all, but as I was sitting there listening to it again, I got to thinking about all the political conversations that I've had over the years. And I've noticed that if I left the words Democrat and Republican at the door, and I just talked about, the living wage, for example, all of us trying to pay our bills, all of us being in debt, all of us struggling to afford groceries. If I just talked about the common everyday struggles that we faced, and I didn't say Democrat, I didn't say Republican, I didn't shit on another politician or praise another politician, I could usually walk away from that argument in agreement with people. I remember conversations I've had talking about healthcare and how that every other country's got it. Why can't we have it? And talk about our sick parents, talk about our sick grandparents, talk about the things we're going through. And it's always when I've said, well, if you'll just vote for this Democrat over here, they'll fix it for you. The minute I say that, it's like, I don't trust them. And then the minute that I say, I speak ill of their leader or ill of their party, then we're right back at each other's throats. But he's right. You know, we all have those same things in common. We all struggle to make it. And I think right now more than ever, we're all really struggling to find a voice of reason. I think that everything is really loud right now. And the louder it gets, the further that it drives everyone away. But if we could ever just calm down and quieten down and take a few deep breaths, we could look around and say, hey, you know what? We all have the same things in common. We all want the same things for each other. We may not agree on every single thing. We're never going to. And that's something that I say to people even on my side. I say, you know, we're not always going to agree. That's not what it's about. It's not about if I agree with you on every single issue. I know there's listeners that listens to my videos and they may agree with 90% of what I say, but there'll be that one thing they disagree with, and they'll message me about it, and they'll tell me how they disagree with that one particular part that I said, and I say to them, you have every right to do that. But like Talarico said, do you have a elderly parent you're trying to take care of? Well, so do I. You know, do you have debts you're trying to pay off? Well, I do too. And if we could just start right there and block out all of the rhetoric and block out all of the ridiculous social media type culture. Because I really do believe that type of, I believe, you know, social media is what got us to where we're at. And I know it's kind of funny for me to be sitting here saying that as someone who is on YouTube, has a channel, and my presence is on social media. But like Marlon Brando before me, he was someone who was very critical of Hollywood and the way that they went about framing things. And I've heard him criticize movies for, portraying people in certain ways. So I can definitely point to social media and say that there's a lot of, on social media, people want like instant gratification and they want an instant win. They want to own somebody instantly. So they'll go scrolling, and if they're a liberal, they'll go scrolling to see where that, a liberal owned a dumbass MAGA. And the MAGA people will sit and scroll to see where some MAGA person owned a libtard. And they just sit and throw that stuff back and forth at one another, and it really doesn't do any of us any good. That's why that I don't go on panels. I've had people say, why don't you ever go on Piers Morgan? Because I'm not going to sit there and scream at those people. I'm not going to give them the clickbait that they want. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have reasonable conversations. I'm trying to look at things from a different way. And I have guests on my channel all the time. We sit down, we have reasonable conversations. And reasonable conversations might not be, they may not get the clicks or the views that me sitting here screaming. I mean, I could bring Tim Pool on the show, Bandana versus the Beanie, and me and him could sit there and just scream at each other all day long, but I don't see what it would accomplish. I really don't. I just think if we sat down, talked about what we were going through, talked about our struggles, just leave the politics and the political parties at the door. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to come back in and vote one way or the other. And, I remember a time when my family used to, I pretty much knew where everybody stood, but there was a couple of them that would be like, well, I don't like to say who I voted for. I like to keep that to myself. That's just between me. That's when I vote in the booth, that's just me and my conscience, and I'm just going to vote that way, and it's none of nobody's business. Kind of miss those days when there were people like that. Now everybody has an opinion. Now everybody at the table that used to not be talking, they're all talking at the same time, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe if we just all stopped and listened to each other, To people on our side, I know that it can be very tiresome talking to MAGA all the time, especially when they're yelling conspiracy theories at the top of their lungs and talking over you and trying to own you in a moment. But take a little bit of advice there from Talarico and just bring it back to the points. Talk about their elderly parents. Talk about their debts. Talk about grocery prices. Talk about the struggles they face. Try to bring them back down, And to the people on the right that just can't seem to get past a lot of their prejudice, I would say, why not listen to people? Before you go demonizing a lifestyle you don't understand, how about you talk to someone? How about you just hear them out? And how about you understand that trans person that you got such a problem with, they're just trying to feed their family and pay their bills and go to their job every day the same way you are. And if you truly are about don't tread on me, then you would stand up for them too. So, yeah, folks, if we could find a way to just bring it back down to a real conversation and block out a lot of the noise, I believe a lot of times what happens is we get caught up so deeply in the noise that we can't make it back to the common ground. But maybe if we just blocked out the noise, maybe eventually we would be able to land on some common ground. But I appreciate y'all so much for supporting what I do here on the channel, and I will definitely be playing more clips and talking more about James Talarico. I would love to talk to him myself because he went on Joe Rogan, and I played some of the clips on the channel here, and I could tell that he was really making Joe Rogan think. And I know a lot of us have our feelings about Joe Rogan. I get it. I have mine. I have very strong opinions about Joe Rogan. But Talarico going into a space like that, I think he can do a lot, and I think he can move the needle a lot. So I will definitely feature him more here on the channel because I just want to try to bring the conversation back to common sense.